and the slide deck for this webinar will be found at edtech.bccs.edu/webinars. And I'm sure somebody will put that link in the chat for us. If you have any questions, please do feel free to put those items in the chat. We have many people to help us today. I am Terry Milroy. I'm from Southside Virginia Community College, the coordinator of education technologies. In the chat today, we have Paige Durham, the instructional designer from Germanna, Forrest Smith, who is the LMS admin from Germanna, and David Todd from the systems office. So thank you to all of them for helping me out today. And here's what we're going to cover in this webinar. We're going to start by talking about choosing the best quiz type for you and your needs in your class. Then building a quiz in classic quizzes, moderating a classic quiz, building a quiz in new quizzes, moderating a new quiz, and some of the increased functionalities of new quizzes. So choosing the best quiz type for your assessment. Classic quizzes, we lost the C there, must be your choice if your institution or program is requiring the use of Lockdown Browser. Understand from the beginning, Lockdown Browser does not work with new quizzes at all. So if you are being required to use the Lockdown Browser and or monitoring software, you will need to use classic quizzes. Classic quizzes allows for graded and ungraded surveys as well as graded and ungraded quizzes. So if you're wanting to put out a survey to students, then that might be your choice. Observers can access students in classic quizzes. Right now, the observer function is not tied to new quizzes. You can bookmark question banks in classic quizzes, and the record audio and video and accessibility checkers are in the rich content editor in classic quizzes where they are not available yet in new quizzes. However, new quizzes has several features that are beneficial as well. You can search within question banks in new quizzes. There are additional question types, which is part of the increased functionality we're going to talk about. And increased functionality of existing question types, meaning that there are classic quiz question types that work better in new quizzes. You can shuffle answers per question and shuffle questions globally in new quizzes. And you can moderate students to add extra time for the whole course in new quizzes. So all of those are benefits, and what you choose to do is going to be up to you. So what do you choose? Definitely choose classic quizzes if you are using or required to use Lockdown Browser or monitoring programs. If you know you need to be careful about accessibility checking within quiz items because you have students with disabilities in your course, or if your LMS admin does not have new quizzes enabled because some institutions have not turned that feature on yet. Choose your new quizzes if you want the additional question types or the increased functionality. If you want to be able to shuffle answers within a question, or if you do not need to use Lockdown Browser or monitoring programs. So I hope that's clear. So the first activity, because there's not a lot to physically do, I would like you to take about a minute, go to your course or your sandbox, go to settings at the bottom of your navigation list, and go to feature options within settings and see if new quizzes is toggled on, or if it's on allow, toggle it on for your course or your sandbox. Note that if new quizzes is not enabled by your institution, you won't have this ability, but it'll be great if you can follow along. So I'm going to give you about 1 minute to check that functionality. Ready, set, go. Okay, that was about a minute, so let us continue. We're going to start by building a classic quiz. So how do we add a classic quiz? There are two ways to add a classic quiz in Canvas. You can choose quizzes in the navigation list on the left-hand side of your course screen and click the red, or click on quizzes. Sorry, I think I wrote this wrong. And click the plus, the big red plus quiz button at the top right of the quizzes section screen. And then when you do that, you're going to get this box that gives you the option to choose classic or new quizzes, and you'll click the radio button for classic quizzes. So let me show you what that looks like real quick. I am in one of my demonstration courses, so let me go to quizzes, wherever that went. There we go. And when I click on quizzes, I have this plus quiz button up here at the top right, the red button. When I click that, I get the pop out to choose. And if I choose classic quiz and submit, then I'm going to get to the option to build, or all the options to build my quiz out. So let's go back here for 1 minute. You can also add a classic quiz by going to modules and clicking the plus button to the right of the module name and selecting quiz from the drop-down menu. Then within this selection box that you see here on the right, after you click new quiz, you're going to have to enter a quiz name, choose the assignment group you want to put it in under, choose to indent it in your modules list if you want, and click add item. So let's do it that way. If I cancel this and go to my modules instead, I can go to my demo webinar module here, click the plus. At the drop-down menu, choose quiz, click new quiz at the top of the box, and I'm going to give this a quiz name. Choose an assignment group, and if there's not one listed here, you can change it later that you want, but I'm going to call this quizzes as the assignment group. I'm not going to indent, and I'm going to add item. Okay, and then I can obviously click on the name of the quiz to edit. So once you have entered your classic quiz screen, you're going to notice that you can identify a classic quiz easily because it has 3 tabs at the top. It has details, questions, and mastery paths. Now we don't deal with mastery paths, but you do see all 3 of those tabs at the top. Details down below are going to include the quiz type. Remember a minute ago, I mentioned that classic quizzes allows you to do graded and ungraded quizzes from the menu, as well as graded and ungraded surveys. You choose the assignment group. Again, you can choose to shuffle answers, time limit, allow multiple attempts, and you can set the restrictions for how students can see their quiz responses and show 1 question at a time, as well as further down require an access code or a password. Filter IP addresses you probably are not going to be messing with right now because from home that's probably not an issue. And then you have your assigned to with your due date and your availability dates. So let's go to Canvas and do one of these. So we have this classic quiz demo that I just created. Let's edit. And as you see at the top, you've got the 3 tabs. You've got details, you've got questions, and you've got mastery paths, which again, we're not going to mess with. But you can put your instructions in here. And notice that you do have this button to record and upload media. And over here, the accessibility checker in classic quizzes in the rich content editor. Those 2 features are not in the rich content editor in new quizzes right now. If you go down here, you can choose quiz type. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a graded quiz, but I could choose a practice or ungraded quiz in the graded or ungraded survey. Again, I've already chosen my assignment group, but I can change it here if I want. Shuffle answers. I can put a time limit on it. If you haven't heard this before, the time limits in Canvas are very strict. In Blackboard, if students were continually submitting, there was a little bit of fudge time that the system allowed. But really, if you say 60 minutes, then at 60 minutes and 10 or 15 seconds, the student is going to get timed out, even if they're regularly submitting answers. So you want to think carefully. If you don't mind if they take a little bit of extra time, just go ahead and build that extra time into your limit, or don't set a limit at all. Especially with students working at home right now, the time limit may be a little bit of a negative feature. You can allow multiple attempts, and if you do, you choose whether to keep the highest, the latest, or the average of all scores that they get. And then you need to say the allowed number of attempts. Now, if you don't check this box and put a number in this box, then the allow multiple attempts is infinite. Okay, so you want to make sure that you do check this box and have a number in there. Let students see their quiz responses. This is just going to decide how students get to look at the quiz once they've submitted it. So incorrect questions will be marked in student feedback, so you can let them see their responses here. If you're giving them multiple attempts, be sure that you check the box only after their last attempt, because you probably don't want them to see their incorrect questions and correct answers before they've finished their last attempt. Or maybe you do, and if so, then you'll check the only once after each attempt. You don't have to let students see the correct answers. You can check or uncheck that box. But if you do, you can choose to do so only after their last attempt or at a specific date and time. My nursing faculty use this a lot, so that the attempt on the test ends at 10 a.m. So at 10:01, they are allowed to see their correct answers. And at 10:30, those correct answers close and they're not allowed to see it again. Show one question at a time. You can do that for the whole quiz right here. Require an access code or a password. Again, you're not going to want to filter IP addresses, but you are going to want to put a due date to make sure that it shows up on students' calendars. So I'm just going to randomly pick a date here. And you can add an availability date, available from and available into, so that students don't get access to it from the breadcrumb trail in the gradebook. And then either save or save and publish. But we want to do our questions before we save, sorry. In classic quizzes, you've got to go back up here and click the questions tab. And so let's look, before we do that, at the type of questions that exist. Once you click on the questions tab, you have three buttons: the new questions, the new question group, and the find questions. So you can add a question manually by just clicking the new question plus new question button, and it will bring up a box for you to type the question. Or if you have question banks already added to your course, you can click find questions and it will bring up a box like what's down here that shows you your question banks on the left. And once you click on a question bank, it allows you to choose questions from that bank. You can also use the middle button plus new question group. And that allows you to create a group of questions from which the computer will be able to select questions at random for each student. This is the only way to randomize questions that way. So you can link a question group to a question bank. So if you want to say, I want my question group to be all of the questions in bank 1, you can do that. You can select specific questions from a question bank and add to the group. And in fact, you could select specific questions from multiple banks and add to the group. Or you can enter questions manually into the group. You have all three of those options. But if you want Canvas to pull, let's say you have a question bank of 100 questions and you want every student to get a random 25, this is the way that you do that, is to create the question group and then have 25 questions assigned. Okay, there are a bunch of question types in classic quizzes, but the one thing that I do want to always emphasize is that the text option, which is the last thing in the drop-down menu when you go to add a question, says text, And it is not really a question. It is a statement that gives no way for a student to respond. I'm not exactly sure the purpose of this, but it's been a little bit strange for us to have as a question type, but don't use that unless it's something that you're just making as a statement within the quiz for students to know. Okay, before we do our activity, let me go here and show you again. If I want to add a new question, I click plus new question, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it question 1. Oops. And let's make it a multiple choice question, because we're going to look at multiple choice questions in new quizzes as well. And how many days have we been in quarantine? And the correct answer is, let's see, let's do 10, let's do 20, let's do 100, or let's do, I've lost track. And just to be funny, if you want to change, the correct answer always defaults to the first one. So if you want to change the correct answer, then you just hover over here to the left of possible answer, and you can click on the green arrow to make it now the correct answer. And so I've lost track is what I'm going to call it. You can give feedback to students in this box for choosing the correct answer. So you can say, great, because they chose the correct answer. If you wish, you can go into every incorrect answer and give feedback there. Let's do that quick. Oops. And then down at the bottom, there is feedback that you can give globally to students regardless of the answers that they chose. Then I'm going to update the question. And then I can continue making questions for my test. One thing that I did not point out is that the points for the question are over here on the right, and you need to set the points before you update the question. Okay, so now that we've done all of that, it's time for you guys to do some and for me to take a drink of water. So your second activity is to go to your sandbox, or I would recommend an old course, not a new course, and create a classic quiz using either the quiz navigation area or the modules plus dropdown that I showed you. Enter the settings for your quiz and add 1 question. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to get this done, and there is music if it gets annoying. Put it in the chat and Paige can tell me to shut it up. Ready, set, go. Oops. Okay, that's 3 minutes. I hope you guys had an opportunity to create a quiz and add a question to it. Now we're going to talk about moderating classic quizzes. So when you are getting ready to build your quiz, before you click edit on the quiz as you are opening it from modules, over here to the, over here to the right, and my little circle moved somehow, is moderate this quiz. And that's what you're going to need to click on to get to the moderating options. And when you do, you're going to see something like the box at the top of this screen, assuming that you are in a class with students. Now, if you're working in your sandbox today, note that this will be empty because there won't be any students in the class. But you're going to see a list of students, the number of attempts that they have completed, the time it took them to complete each attempt, the number of attempts they have left on that particular assessment, their score for each assessment, and then you've got this pencil, which is an editing tool. And the edit allows you to either give an extra attempt on the quiz or to unlock the quiz in the event that perhaps there was a power failure, especially right now with students working at home, maybe with broadband or internet that's not ideal. So you can unlock the existing attempt from there. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like in the actual interface. So if I go back to modules and I click on my classic quiz demonstration, oh, because I don't have anything there, that's not going to work. Hold on, let me go to a different one in there. Let me see if I go to my quizzes, I've got a couple of them. All right, so if I go here, you can see over here on the right is the moderate this quiz button. It's right above the speed grader, which is where you would go later to, or before that, to grade. So you go here to grade first after the quiz is complete, unless it's auto graded by the computer. And then later, if you need to, you come in to moderate. So moderate here, and again, you can see because this is not a regular course, I don't have any students, but you have the attempts, the time, the number of attempts left, scores per attempt, and then if you click on the pencil, you're going to get a number of extra attempts for that student, or to manually unlock the quiz for the next attempt if the student got locked out. Okay, so going back here, that was pretty quick. I'm just going to give you 1 minute to download the resource page below for information on moderating classic quizzes, because I don't want you to mess up an existing course by going in and moderating anything. So I'm just going to give you maybe a minute to download this and save it somewhere so that you have it. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Now we're going to build a new quiz. So creating a new quiz is done the same way as one of the ways you can create a classic quiz. You're going to go to quizzes in your navigation list. And when you click on that and click on the red plus quiz button, you are going to instead choose the radio button for new quizzes before you submit. So let me show you again how that's done. If I go to quizzes here and I hit the plus quiz, then I'm going to choose new quizzes and hit submit. And it is going to bring up this screen, which we are now going to talk about. And that screen has some of the same options as the setup screen for classic quizzes, but it looks a little bit different. You have at the top the number of points for the total quiz, and this is a little bit different. In classic quizzes, you add points per question, and that gives you your points total for the quiz. In new quizzes, you assign a total number of points here, and then you put in your questions afterwards. Sorry, assignment group, again, is your category. Displayed grade as either points or percentage. Here is a little checkbox. If you want this to be a practice assessment, instead of like in classic quizzes, having a practice quiz as a type, you just check this little box, and regardless of the grade the student gets on this assessment, it will not be averaged into their grade totals. All right, and then below that, you've got the submission type, which we're never going to mess with, and then the assign to box. When you hit save or save and submit underneath the assign box, you are going to get to this screen that is shown below the red arrow with the little rocket ship in the corner. This is where you actually build your questions. So let's go through that process. I've got my new quiz started here. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it quiz webinar demonstration. I'm going to give it a 50-point value. I'm going to assign it to the quizzes assignment group. Display grade as. You do have multiple choices here. I'm going to display grade as points. I can check the box if I do not want to count this towards the final grade. You don't ever mess with the submission type box right now. New quizzes at this moment is an LTI, which basically means it's a tool that has been integrated into Canvas. Soon, new quizzes will be the only quiz type, and this will go away. But while it's here, please don't ever change it or try to mess with it. Go down here and go to your assign to. Again, we always want to put a date on a quiz just so that it shows up on students' calendars and their to-do list. And then I can save or save and publish. I'm going to go ahead and save and publish. And here's my build screen, which again has the rocket ship up in the corner to help you identify it. So I am under build. You can tell that by the little blue line under the word build. And this is where I'm going to put my instructions. And I have to click the little pencil to do my instructions. Notice that the rich content editor here does not have that little play button to add and upload media, nor does it have the accessibility checker here. These are my instructions, and I'm done with my instructions. And then I can go up here to settings and complete the settings for my quiz. I can choose to shuffle the questions, to shuffle the answers, to display only one question at a time, to require a student access code or password, to set a time limit. Again, just as in classic quizzes, the time limit is very strict. So consider carefully what time limit, if any, you need to put on this. Filter IP addresses, again, is not something you're probably going to need to mess with right now when we're all working from home. For those of you who have the need for students to have a calculator, you can toggle this to allow a calculator for all questions in the assessment, and you can choose either a basic or a scientific calculator to be built in. Allow multiple attempts looks a little bit different here than it does in classic quizzes. You still have the ability to choose the highest, the latest, or the average of all of the assessment attempts. You can still allow unlimited or any limited number of attempts, but at least here you know if it says unlimited that it is unlimited. And you can, this is what's different about multiple attempts in new quizzes, you can require time between attempts. So if you check this box, you can choose a number of days, hours, and or minutes that students must wait between attempts before they can move on and try again. I know that I find this helpful because especially with something that's auto-graded by the computer, the student's first instinct is to just do it again and try to get a better score. But if they don't go back and look at the material, chances are they're not going to do a whole lot better. So if you want to, you can require the time between attempts there. And then you have the restrict student result view. By default, the only thing students get in new quizzes is a submission confirmation. They do not see anything else. So if you want students to be able to see their responses and or any correct answers, that has to be a positive choice on your part. So you can show the points awarded overall and per question, as well as the points possible overall and per question, and only show that if that's what you want to do. But if you show items and questions, then you must choose. Do you want the student to see their response? Do you want to show feedback like the good or sorry that wasn't correct? Do you want to indicate that their response was correct or incorrect? And if you do you then want to show the correct answer? So in order to show students the correct answer, you don't have to have the item feedback, but the show items and questions and all three of these boxes have to be checked if you want students to see their correct answer with the incorrect response that they gave. So just a little bit of info there, because once, again, when you create the quiz, it defaults to nothing but a submission confirmation. All right, going on. We just went over all the settings in new quizzes. Again, please do note that shuffle answers is globally for the whole assessment and that the time limit is a hard time limit. So once you are done with your settings, you're going to want to go back and create question types. New Quizzes has most of the same question types as Classic, but they have 4 additional question types, and this is part of the additional functionality that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. So when you click the little blue plus button that we'll show you in a minute to create a question, this is the little box that you get, and it shows you every single question type that you can choose. Couple of things that are different in addition to the new question types is the fact that fill in the blank and fill in multiple blanks is all the same thing. So if you click plus fill in the blank, you can have one or as many blanks as you want in new quizzes. And something that I'm going to say several times in this webinar is to note that a hotspot question cannot be made accessible to students with disabilities. So if you think you might have, or if you know you have a student with any disabilities, you do not want to use hotspot questions because they are not going to be able to use special software to help them. All right, so there are new question types in new quizzes that I showed you on the past screen or on the previous screen. And the first of those is categorization, which allows the instructor to have the students drag and drop answers into the correct category of a set of categories that the instructor creates. And you can also add distractors to add difficulty. So if you want to have 10 answer choices, but only 6 of them are correct, you can add 4 distractors. So students actually have to know what is correct in order to get the question absolutely right. So I'm going to show you one question type at a time, just because I think that's a little bit easier. If I go to build and I click my little plus button to add a question and I click categorization, then I'm going to give this a title. And here's my question. Let's see, what kind of categories can we do? Examples of food types. Because I'm home all the time and all I'm thinking about lately is food. So we're going to say Italian food and Mexican food. And I can give this an answer and I can say spaghetti is a correct answer for Italian, and I can add another answer and say lasagna. And under Mexican, I can say tacos and I can say enchiladas, if I can spell them today. But down here, I can also add distractors. so that my students really have to know what they're talking about and know the material, and they can't just guess and put everything in a category. So as a distractor, I could put fried chicken, or let's say French fries, all right, or whatever I want to do. So when students see this, they're going to see all of the answers and all of the distractors jumbled together, and they're going to have to drag and drop the correct answers under the category. Note that you can add another category and add as many categories as you want, and you can add as many answers to each category as you want. Down below, if you have not enabled a global calculator, and maybe there's only 1 or 2 questions students need a calculator for, you can enable that. You can align to outcomes by clicking here and choosing an outcome from those that have been brought into your course. And you can add this to a question bank. Now, it's important to note that in new quizzes, if you add a question to a question bank, from now on, you have to edit the question in the question bank. You cannot edit it in your assessment. Okay, so just please keep that in mind, is that once you have decided to add a question to a question bank, all editing has to be done in the bank. It can't be done in the assessment anymore. I can change the point value for this question. I can add my feedback for correct and incorrect answers, and then I can click done. Okay, if I go back here, another new question type is ordering. And ordering allows you to have students drag items into a correct sequence with or without before and after labels that act as guides for students. So in the example I've got in this picture, I've got Civil War battles in chronological order, and I've got a first battle and a last battle for them to order between, but you don't have to give them the labels to work with. So going back to our assessment, if I chose to now add a new question and I want to do ordering, then I'm going to say this is question 2 and list, let's see, classes in the order they must be taken. And I can give them, you know, starting with SDV and ending with, I don't know, maybe a research project. And then I can give them answers in the middle. And when the students get the question, then all of the answers will be jumbled and they will have to drag and drop them into the correct order. Note that you can add more than 4 items in a row. You can add as many answers as you want. Or if you want less than 4, you can delete any of the blank items over here. You can show an on-screen calculator again for this question. You can display all of these jumbled answers in a paragraph rather than in a list, if that's the way you want it. And you can include or not include the labels. So if you don't want students to have any guides to work with, you can uncheck the box for include labels. And again, you can align to outcomes, add the question to a question bank, choose your points, your feedback, and click done. Yeah, I know, I didn't do it. So the next set of new question types are stimulus and hotspot that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Stimulus is a lot like the SAT or ACT, if you remember back to those. It allows you to create a text selection, a video, an image, a graph, anything that you want students to look at in terms of interpretation. And then you can add as many questions of as many different question types to refer to the stimulus as you want. I think this is really cool, especially, for people who have, for instance, let's say graphs that they want students to interpret, or if you have maybe a selection of reading for English, but you don't want to just give a multiple choice question. You've got many different question types. And then the hotspot allows you to use drawing tools to outline a particular place on an image where students have to click within the outline you create in order to indicate that they have found the correct part of the image. So for instance, in an anatomy and physiology class, you could use the drawing tools to highlight one of the valves of the heart. And if students don't click within that area, then they don't get the question correct. But if they click on the correct valve area, then they do. So let's look at these real quick before we move on. Again, from the plus, I'm going to choose stimulus first, and I'm going to give it a title, and I'm going to call it whatever, and instructions. Please read below, or no, please watch the video. Let's do that. Watch the video. And answer all questions. And from here, I can insert some media if I want this to be a video, and I can put the source in there. I can embed the HTML code, and then I can click OK. If I wanted this to be text, I could type in here. I could copy and paste from an article or whatever I wanted to do, or I can actually copy a source URL in here. This is just for reference. It's actually not visible to students, but it gives an extra reference if needed. I can put a picture in here. Let's do that. Let's browse. And I have all of these screenshots for making this particular webinar, so we'll choose one of those and import. Notice that you had the option when you did that to add alternate text for those with screen readers. And then I can add stimulus. And now over here on the right, I'm going to attach questions to the stimulus. And I have the exact same choices for questions except for stimulus that I have for the rest of the quiz. So I can choose a true false question. This is a picture of a dog, and that would be false, and I can say done. And I can continue adding as many questions of as many different question types to the stimulus as I want. Okay, I can also add a hotspot question. And hotspot is going to require me to add an image. So let's see, where is the screenshot? There we go. If I do that, then I can draw the hotspot shape. I can take this square and I can say, you know, this whole red area is where I want them to click. And the question is, click on the plus quiz button. And then this allows me to have students click there, and if they click in the right spot, they get the question right. Okay, that was a lot. Before we go on to the activity, I do want to show you one more thing about functionality in quizzes, in new quizzes, and that is in multiple choice. When you create a multiple choice question, and I'm just going to, you know, put some words in here. You have the ability to vary points by answer or shuffle choices, which you do not have in the classic quiz multiple choice option. If I vary points by answer, then it's going to give me the ability to put different point values for different answers. And the example I always give is that in algebra, for instance, perhaps the correct answer to a question is -4. But if the student does the problem and gets 4 instead of -4, they may have done all of the formula correctly. They just didn't carry the symbol over correctly. And so a teacher may decide that instead of giving 0 points for the answer of 4, they're going to give half credit or maybe 1 point for the attempt versus 0 points. You also have the ability to shuffle choices within multiple choice here in new quizzes. And when you check this box to shuffle choices, you are going to get all of these locks next to each choice. And that is because if this answer, the last one, is all of the above, you don't want that shuffled answer to appear at the top suddenly. So you're going to want to lock that answer in place so that it doesn't shuffle with everything else. So this just gives you the ability to use all of the above or both A and B or whatever, and shuffle other answers just to give you a little bit of variety in your test. Okay? So now that we have looked at all of that, and I know that was a lot, let's do another activity. I want you to go to your sandbox or your old course, wherever you're working today, create a new quiz, adjust the quiz settings, and add at least one question of a new question type. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and I'm going to mute the music, so I'm going to let you get ready, set, go. Okay, I hope that you had a few minutes and were able to add a new quiz and a new question type. The last thing we're going to talk about today is moderating new quizzes. So at the top of your build screen in new quizzes, to the far right, you have a button that says moderate. And when you click it, moderate gives you many of the same features as classic quizzes. You have a list of students, list of their attempts, scores per attempt, the time per attempt, but you also have a log that allows you to see moment by moment when students clicked on questions and when they submitted answers for questions, the exact time they started the assessment and the exact time they submitted the assessment. So this is an additional feature in new quizzes that is beneficial. You also have an accommodations the pencil to edit, which allows you to add time for a student to the assessment. And then you have a moderate button. and the moderate button gives extra attempts to the student. So by changing the time, you are giving an accommodation for a disability or something else. Moderate is giving extra attempts either for a disability or maybe again for students who get locked out, who have technical problems, what have you. So let me show you what this looks like in the actual Canvas. Oh, sharing is paused. There we go. Don't know what happened there. So if I go back to the top of my screen and I click on moderate, there is nothing to show there. I forgot. Let's see if I can go to one of my other courses that I've got some stuff in there. If I go to quizzes and I go to this, oh no, that's a classic one. Let's see. Sorry, let me see if I can find one real quick. Do we have one in here? There we go. If I go to moderate, then you can see all of the people, all the students who logged into this demonstration course. If they had actually taken the assessment, you would see the attempts, you would see their score per attempt, their time. There would be a log, and when you clicked on the log, it would actually open up a pop-up window that would have a timestamp going down the left side and what they did at each timestamp. If you click on the pencil, notice that you can adjust the time for every assessment in the course for this student. So this is an ability to make one adjustment and never have to adjust for all of the other assessments. So if I choose to give additional time or remove the time limits, then I do this for the whole course. You can also give a time multiplier. And this is really beneficial because some of your assessments may be 60 minutes, some may be 45 minutes, some may be 90 minutes. And if you just say, give students time and a half, then that allows you to make sure that they have the correct amount of time and you don't have to be constantly adjusting the numbers. Because if you just give them an extra 30 minutes, 30 minutes may not be the correct multiplier that they really need or that their accommodations require, depending upon the length of the assessment. So I can save that. I can also click the moderate button and give either an additional attempt here, or I can give additional time or remove the time limit just on this assessment. So if a student gets locked out of a test because of technical problems, I can give them an additional number of minutes, or I can remove the time limit completely. Okay, so that's a lot of information. In our webinar today, we have compared classic and new quizzes to figure out which is the best option for you. We've built a classic quiz, moderated a classic quiz, built a new quiz, moderated a new quiz, and within those structures, you've seen some of the additional functionality of the new quizzes assessment type. So I hope that you all enjoyed the webinar and learned something. We always want feedback. If you would take a moment and complete the survey, I'm sure one of my good friends will put this in the chat. This gives us not only feedback on how we're doing, but also helps us to know where we can do additional training that will benefit you. We want to thank you so much for coming today. I know that this has been a really topsy-turvy, stressful, and upside down kind of time for everybody. So know that we appreciate your attendance, and if there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. The slide deck along with the recording will be posted to edtech.bccs.edu/webinars. And you'll notice when you look at selected sources to Canvas guides that show you how to do the things that we did in the webinar today. So thank you again for coming. If you've got any additional questions, please post them in the chat now. If any of my friends need to unmute and have me re-demonstrate something real quick, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day.